'cause I can't leave with the swallows, curled up in darkness. The temperature drops and I follow, and then I'm nowhere near till the sun reappears. And no, I'm nowhere near.
Welcome to the Purple Jam podcast. Today we have Rosie Abbott. Hello, Rosie.
Hello.
Hi. So who are you? What do you do? What are you working on at the minute?
Good question. Well, yes. Where do I start? I'm a songwriter. I've been writing and recording my own stuff for a long time. I've recorded 2 albums of my own material. I produced it all myself. What was the second question?
What do you do? I suppose you've kind of answered
What
that.
do I do?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I kind of do music because I work part-time, so music is kind of my other part-time job that I don't get paid for.
Ace.
but that I would like to get paid for one day.
For sure. And what are you working on at the minute?
Oh yeah, that was the question.
Yeah.
At the moment, so I released an album just over a year ago, and since then I've just been working on loads of new ideas, demoing tracks, trying to come up with enough material for another album, and then hopefully by sort of the end of this year I'll have enough stuff to record another album, with the aim hopefully to get something out next year, because my first album, there was a gap of about 4 years between that and my second album.
Yeah.
And I sort of made a vow to myself that I would never leave it that long again. So yeah, fingers crossed.
You said you were working on new ideas. I always find the most interesting thing to talk about is the creative process. So where do your ideas come from, and how do you get them kind of solidified?
Generally I find if I sit down and try and force ideas, nothing happens. So I tend to just set the recorder going and just blurt out whatever comes first into my head, strum chords. Sometimes I'll start with like a drum track and just jam over the top of that and come up with a chord sequence. And I tend to random words, sometimes just complete gobbledygook, whatever, just to sort of get some ideas down, and then I'll listen back to that over the next kind of few days, and sometimes there'll be like a little gem of an idea that I think, there's something in that, and then I'll go back to it and rework it and develop it. Sometimes I'll get a song that's pretty much all in one piece, comes out in one go, which is always great. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that you always hope for. But I like to just kind of keep things varied, really. I don't really have a sort of set rigid rule, because the whole point is that there isn't any rules.
Ace. And as a songwriter then, who are your biggest inspirations?
Well, it's really obvious. Well, it's obvious to me, but the Beatles are like, they're always been my favourite band, and they probably always will be, just in terms of their amount of stuff that they wrote and the varied stuff that they wrote. You can't beat it, really. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of the Kinks, and growing up, I think in my teens, after I got through my sort of girly boy band stage, I kind of grew up a little bit. I really got into Blur and Britpop kind of thing. That was sort of my stepping stone from that. Then I went further back in time and got stuck back in time. And I do listen to new stuff. I mean, I'm really recently been listening to quite a bit of Laura Marling.
Oh yeah.
She's really cool. There's a guy goes under the name of Fruit Bats. I don't know if you've heard of him. He writes some really cool stuff. So I keep it kind of an ear open, but favourites. David Bowie, he's one of my heroes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fab. Yeah.
What do you think it is about that kind of era of music? So we're talking kind of 60s, 70s. You know, kind of. What is it about that feels more important to you than, say, you know, a well-written Rihanna track or that sort of thing?
I think it's melody. I'm just a sucker for an interesting chord sequence. I like the challenge of stuff that doesn't go how you're expecting it to go,
Right.
and I find a lot of contemporary stuff a little bit predictable somehow. Whereas the Beatles stuff was just on the right side of, it was melodic enough to get stuck in your head, but it was weird, but not so weird that it was just impenetrable and you couldn't get your head around it. I just like the freedom of their approach to recording, and messing around with sounds of, you know, making the guitars sound like a piano or the drums sound like a bass or whatever. You know, they were just a bit crazy with their product. Well, that was, you know, George Martin had a big part to play, who was also a big influence on me as a sort of producer. And I guess it was all sort of stuff that was exciting. It was happening for the first time. They were kind of feeling the way and setting the way for generations to come, things that hadn't been done before, which you can just feel the energy inside it, which you just can't help being inspired by it.
I can't settle down until we've settled up first. Though I'll be here the whole winter, I won't get up, I won't be disturbed. No, I'm nowhere near till the sun reappears. The seeds have been sown, you're watching them grow. The seasons divide, you see only half of everything.
As a producer, what kind of sounds are you attracted to? You mentioned you like the experimentation of some of the perhaps more psychedelic Beatles stuff, but you know, what are you aiming for when you're rounding out a song with production?
It varies from song to song. I think you know it when you've got it. Like it's one of those. It's just getting that sound where you think, yes, that is. Often I'll have an idea in my head of how I want a song to sound, and it's basically just trying to match up to that. And it's getting all the instruments having their own breathing space and making sure that subtle things that may not be noticeable to other people listening to it, but I get really hung up on that piano note, that's a really good piano note and that needs to stand out. You know what I mean? And it's just picking the right EQ and levels until I get that moment where something clicks, or, you know, you get goosebumps or whatever. It's something you can't really put into words or put your finger on it. I don't really sit down and think in a technical way. I go more by my gut instinct with this kind of thing.
Talking about process, how do you think the way in which you've worked on music has changed over the years, if it has changed at all?
I think over the years I've been experimenting with different sounds, and the software that I use, well, not even software, I mean, initially I started off recording on a 4-track cassette thing.
Retro.
Then I progressed onto an 8-track digital recorder. And then this last album I've been using my Mac with Logic Pro on it. So I've just basically sort of taught myself as I've gone along, and that's obviously had an influence on how my music sounds, because I can make it a lot closer now to what I've got in my mind, rather in the past I was kind of limited to
Yeah, the
my skills
technology.
and what technology I was working with.
I feel like a lot of people who aren't, as big as Coldplay, undergo the same challenges trying to balance, being able to live and being ambitious musically. Um,
Hmm.
what do you think? One is the hardest thing about that, and two, have you got any advice for people who are trying to do that?
What, surviving without making any money?
Yeah, pretty much. Or just
Um, I
maintaining
think
motivation, I think, is the
the
difficult thing.
motivation, yeah, I think because I got into songwriting long before I even considered it as a way of making money. I mean, I was probably 11 or 12 when I
Mm.
started writing and recording things, and it was just the sort of, sounds really cheesy, but that was what got me into it. I wasn't motivated by money,
Yeah.
and I went to music college with the idea of getting a sort of experience and information about the music industry as a way of sort of educating myself to try and to get into it. But it's not as simple as that, especially when you're trying to do something different and you're not willing to sort of mold yourself into a sort of pigeonhole or
Yeah.
into a particular scene. So I just kind of stuck at it, thinking, well, somebody might like it. And I have. I mean, I've not got a huge following. I have sold albums, though. I've had lots of really positive feedback from people, and that's enough for
Hmm.
now. It would be lovely to make some money from it, but if that was the only reason I was doing it, I would have given up
Yeah,
a
for
long
sure.
time ago.
I find music promotion both an ugly thing, but also something that's quite interesting once you get
Hmm.
past the like, oh, this is my baby, I shouldn't sell it
Yeah.
philosophy. Do you have any interesting kind of promotion ideas or techniques which you think you might try for your next project, or is that something that you don't really tend to think about so much?
Yeah, I tend to leave that until the last stage of the process,
Right.
really, which is maybe a bit of my downfall in terms of reaching out to a wider audience.
Mm.
I mean, part of the issue as well is that I don't gig very often, because of the stuff that I'm recording is it's really complex, layered stuff
Yeah.
with lots of harmonies
Hmm.
and loads of instruments. And so promotion wise, I think playing live still is probably the best way of reaching new audience. So
Hmm.
I tend to have to rely on the internet a lot
Right.
to connect to people. I mean, I've got things on Spotify, I've got Bandcamp, I've got all the usual
Yeah.
social
All
media
the usual places.
platforms, but it's looking for new ways to reach out to people, which I guess doing things like this, podcasts,
Yeah.
definitely are
Way forward for
a
sure.
way, for sure, yeah.
Ace. Cool. All right.
Or selling jam, even. I mean,
Also,
what happened to that idea?
I believe you were gonna make the jam. I think that
I
was
believe
the
it was,
yeah.
and then I realized I'd never made jam before. And
uh, still a pipe dream. The actual purple jam. One day. Fair. Cool. Well, thanks very much for your time, Rosie. It's been great to chat.
you're
Um,
welcome, yeah, my pleasure.
and where can people find your music?
Okay, well, the easiest way is probably just to put Rosie Abbott music, Google it, or my web address is rosieabbott.co.uk, and that will take you straight to my Bandcamp page, which has got both my albums on there, which you can download, or you can order physically.
Nowhere near